Welcome to 7 Investing Now, a show that teaches you how to take a long-term view on investing by better understanding what's happening in the market now.
Good afternoon, 7 investors, and welcome to the final 7 Investing Now of 2020. My name, of course, is Daniel Brooks Klein, but you can call me Dan. I'm joined today by Simon Erickson, Manisha Samy, and Maxx Chatsko. Team, tomorrow is New Year's Eve. I'll start with Simon. Simon, big New Year's plans? You're going to watch the ball drop in Times Square? What's happening this New Year's for you?
On TV. I'm going to watch it on TV and stay at home. Yeah, no big plans this year, unfortunately.
I think sadly that is what we are all doing. Max, are you going to a big party full of millennials with no masks and all sorts of dangerous things like a hugging party or whatever it is you kids do?
Yeah, Dan, as you know, I'm a big influencer, as I call it, and we're having a huge party. It's going to be great. You're invited, so but you can watch on our Snapchat, or whatever they use. I don't know.
Sure, if I could figure out how Snapchat works, I would absolutely do that. Manisha Samy, what are you up to this New Year's?
I think I'm going to just catch up on my sleep and wish 2021 gets here even faster.
Yeah, this has been an absolutely dreadful year, but it's been a good one for us at 7 Investing, and that's largely because of you. And remember, this is an interactive show. So if you ask us a question in the comments, in the chat, we should be able to see it, and we'll try to field as many of them as we can. We're going to do a few different things today. The entire team is going to share their most important story of the year. We're going to make predictions for 2021. But to start, we're going to do 4 questions about the market. We'll go the same order. We'll go Simon, Max, Manisha, and we'll just keep it in that order to make it easy. We'll reverse it later in the show. Question number 1, aside from the pandemic, what surprised you the most about 2020? You're not allowed to talk about the Astros or any of the sports teams in the Texas area. Simon Erickson, you're up first.
Yep. I got nothing, man. No sports teams, no predictions, no great 2020, Dan. Just kidding, of course. The big story for me was the rise of SPACs, the special purpose acquisition companies that just took the world by storm this last year. To put some context behind this is where companies are merging with an existing operating company with a public shell company to bring them more efficiently to the market than the traditional IPO. And to put some numbers behind this, we had 248 SPAC IPOs, up from 59 the last year, Dan. So this is a quadrupling in the efforts of SPAC IPOs. That's amazing. It's really amazing that that's about half of the 481 regular IPOs, the traditional IPOs that we had. So this has really jumped into the scene. They raised about $83 billion of funding for these now public companies. That's something I really didn't expect. A huge story for me in 2020.
Simon, it's both good and it's troubling because it does sort of allow companies to go public easier and retain more of the money. That's good. But doesn't it feel like on some of them, like with DraftKings, it felt like you got like a postcard that says like, yeah, we don't make money, give us some. Like I did not feel confident about the information I was getting on a lot of these SPACs. And as you know, I'm not a big investor in IPOs. I usually wait a couple of quarters.
This is one that you really are betting on the jockey. This is one where the financial sponsor and the terms and conditions of those contracts makes a really big deal. And so I think we see the power law. I think we see the 80-20 rule at play here, where you want to spend most of your time focusing on the Chamath Palihapitiyas of the world, those 20% of the sponsors that are really doing good deals, because everyone's going to be coming to them because that's when they're going to want to go public.
That I will turn this over. Yeah, SPACs are going to be an interesting thing to follow in the coming year. I think you're going to see direct listings. You're going to see maybe the end of the traditional IPO, or it's going to be much less frequent because we've had the problem with traditional IPOs where they price the shares at 60, they raise it to 80, and then it opens up at 240, and the company left hundreds of millions of dollars on the table. Max, you're going to do something similar. You're going to talk about the rise of SPATs, the things that protect your chute. No, you are not going to do that. Max, answer the question here. What is the biggest non-pandemic related thing you've seen this year?
Yeah, I guess my thing is just how quickly the market rebounded from, the March lows, right? And then even now we see, I don't know what terms you want to apply to it, but like euphoria, right? We see some crazy volatility, lots of things only going up. I guess that's from, a lot of new investors are in. What else, in hindsight, when we look back, what could it be? Is it going to be the selling of order flow data or, in general, it's all kind of this background of Fed policy, right? They're trying to prop up markets and you understand why. But man, it's did you think this was going to happen in March or April, like where we are now? Like, this is a crazy way to end the year, I think. So
I got to be honest, I did. I felt like we were going to adapt and that there would be some companies that would be hurt. But I actually think you've seen some companies that lost a lot of business that showed their ability to adapt. Even if they couldn't win all their business back, they still did pretty well in the market. Starbucks is an example I'll give. They were down 30% in sales, but the market saw how well they adapted. They saw how they handled China, and it worked out well. Manisha Samy, I'll throw this one to you.
Sure. Honestly, I think I'm just impressed and surprised by, if you look at all of these therapeutics companies, how it didn't really hinder their pipeline too much. They continued to make progress. If anything, they accelerated their progress during this time. So I'm just impressed at how quickly, maybe not all of the companies, but a lot of the technological companies or that are based on platform technologies, they continued working, their pipelines continued to develop, and we've just saw amazing data released this year. So I'm just really impressed by their ability to adapt.
Remember that you can comment, you can ask questions, whatever platform you're on. I question whether that's working because usually we have a bunch of people say hello. We haven't even seen that. So technology is evolving. It hasn't fully evolved. Question 2, do you think the massive amount of people who started trading, not investing during the pandemic will be a positive or a negative in the years to come? Simon Erickson.
It's introducing more volatility to the market, which is interesting, Dan. There's a lot more. You said traders not investing, so there's a lot more momentum traders that are reacting just to stock prices going up or down, rather than long-term fundamentals, which is what we tend to like to look for in long-term investing. I think that one interesting kind of tangent to this question is the rise of kind of zero-cost brokerages, right? The Robinhoods, they're saying, hey, you can trade stocks now for $0. And so does that encourage people to get in and out more often? Possibly. It's a net positive that you're not paying commissions versus paying them for retail investors. But, I think that a lot of things also that we need to keep in mind is that there is no free lunch in this. Those brokerages, a lot of times, are still paying for order flow, which means there's high frequency traders in the middle that are actually fulfilling those orders. That means that you might not be getting the advertised prices that are advertised on the exchanges. So when you're seeing the price, there might be a spread in the middle that's different than that because they're not being fulfilled by the exchange itself. And so we've seen, the Robinhoods of the world and several actually of the larger brokerages kind of shifting to the zero cost commission. Maybe that's encouraging more trading, but I think there's also a lot of kind of behind the scenes revenue trading hands that a lot of people might not be aware of.
One of our goals here at 7 Investing is to take the person who's a trader and help them get rid of the volatility, help them understand investing. I can't tell you how many Facebook groups I'm in that are supposedly for investors that are filled with, why did this go up 2% today? Why did this go down 5%? Because that's what stocks do. They don't always go up. They don't always go down. They don't always behave rationally. In the long term, things are different. Maxx Chatsko, your answer to question number 2 here.
Yeah, I think it's good overall. More people are getting involved in investing, right? But yeah, I think a lot of people aren't approaching it the right way. Maybe we all did that in the beginning. I don't know, but for sure, I don't know. So like when stocks go up every day or whatever, right? It's easy to be a trader, but I think the opposite's also true. And once things start to correct or go down, I think the same emotional tendencies at play with humans, people are going to sell more quickly too. So I don't know what's the rush going to be there. I think that could add some fuel to the fire for whatever eventual correction comes our way.
I think it's very likely that this whole scenario turns off some people to the market forever, much to their detriment. And it probably also brings some people to eventually move to ROA. Manisha Samy having some technical difficulties, so we will get back to her on question 3 when that happens. Simon, it's you and me at the moment. Don't know what's going on. Oh, Max has popped back. ZL
He's
has
ready
said
for that party he was talking about, Dan. He's starting his New Year's party a couple hours early.
ZL has said, hi, good to see you guys again. Very nice to see you. We appreciate so many people watching. We will also point out that many of you watch this or listen to this show later in the day, not while we're doing it live, and we really, really appreciate that. Simon, while we wait for Manisha to come back, we're all dealing with some technical issues. It happens to all of us. Question 3 is, what's something you think most people get wrong about the stock market or the sector of it you covered? I answered this on Monday's show, so Simon, I'll start with you.
I liked that show, and there were some good answers you guys gave. In addition to yours, Steve was saying that winning companies tend to continue to hit all-time highs. I think that was a good one too. Mine, the thing that I think that people misunderstand in the stock market is that innovation doesn't happen linearly. And so a lot of times we're so used to seeing price targets, and people kind of fool themselves into thinking that they're overpaying for growth stocks. And in reality, a lot of those price targets and the analysis that's being done on them is the linear assumption of the inputs. And so if you've got a company like Starbucks or a company like Chipotle, you can linearly predict how many burgers or how many Chipotle bowls are going to sell, or how many coffees are going to sell in a given month. And most of them are going to Dan for this show, actually. But if you have something like a technology platform like a Facebook or something like genomic sequencing, there's little cost to all of a sudden these just erupting and going exponential. And so that's why technology, I think, has changed the game for a lot of these companies, where there's very little cost and very quickly they can add new customers on board. We're seeing it happen right now, Dan, in cybersecurity companies. Cybersecurity is a huge problem that needs to be addressed. We saw obviously some big hacks that took place this past month that have led to those vendors. And what they do is they just leverage the cloud-based platforms they have. They add new users very, very quickly at very low cost. And all of a sudden, revenue grows exponentially. And nobody can see something like that happen. So I guess that my overall takeaway from this is whether you're looking at the sales of electric vehicles, whether you're looking at genomic sequencing, whether you're looking at the adoption of Bitcoin, a lot of people are skeptical of a lot of innovation at first. And then once those go mainstream, the opposite happens, where they actually take place a lot faster than people were expecting. And I think that causes inefficiency in the market. I think it's misunderstood by a lot of stock prices out there. And it works to our advantage, certainly as individual investors.
Maxx Chatsko, we are still missing Manisha Samy, so I'll let you answer this one.
Yeah, just to piggyback for a second on what Simon said. I mean, that's definitely true in drug development. Early stage companies and companies in general tend to be very inefficiently priced by Wall Street. It's only when they have these handful of days over the 8-year course of development, when they report data or something, or they have these corrections, like it'll jump up to be properly valued. But I think if you do good research and you understand, this space, you can, buy in earlier and get that, price appreciation when it does come. It's just really boring most of the time, right? Because it's, 5 days over 8-year period is a long time to be waiting around. But those days when they go up is kind of fun. What I would say is what people tend to misdiagnose is in renewable energy. We saw it this year with the election, right? A lot of people said, "Oh, Biden won, the Biden administration. That's gonna be great for renewable energy." And in reality, that has nothing to do with the trajectory of renewable energy. Could some federal policies, provide some credits or extend credits? Absolutely. And that would help a little bit. But for the most part, I think what people misunderstand is that renewable energy policies are set by states, individual states. And a lot of times with renewable energy, these advantages are, distributed geographically. So what works in California or Florida or Texas isn't going to work in like Minnesota or New Hampshire or Pennsylvania. I live in Pennsylvania. We have awful renewable energy technology, but we're sitting on tons and tons and tons of natural gas. When California comes out and says we're going to get to 100% renewables by tomorrow, sure, some of that's a little political, but they could do it because they have great solar potential, they have great wind potential there as well. So it's mostly dictated by states. Sure, federal policy can add a little bit to that, but really has nothing to do with it one way or another.
Don't worry, Max. The Pittsburgh area may not be doing it well with renewable energy, but it is the mustache capital of the country. If you're looking for people with ridiculous mustache, Pittsburgh, I've only been there a couple of times, so this may not be a fair analysis. I apologize, people of Pittsburgh. I am sure your football team will not blow it in the second round of the playoffs. That absolutely won't happen.
Last week, he was making fun of our sandwiches. Now he's talking about mustaches. He's probably right about the Steelers. We are going to choke in the playoffs.
Yeah, here's the thing. Your French fries go outside the sandwich. I think that is fair to say. We're going to do our fourth question here on these 4 big investing questions. Then we're going to get to some of your questions and comments. We're going to take one from Max Lucas. We're going to take one from King Kang. I'm saying that out loud to give you guys a bit of a heads up. But let's get to question number 4. where were you the most wrong about the stock market in 2020? And feel free to pull something up that made a lot of sense in January or February. Like, I thought it was going to be a banner year for a couple of companies that, basically haven't been able to operate during that time. So Simon Erickson, you can go first.
Yeah, I think that I underestimated how quickly Bitcoin was going to catch on in financial services. This is something that, it was at $7,000, the price of a Bitcoin at the beginning of the year. It's now close to 28,000. So Bitcoin quadruples again in 2020, even at a time where I think a lot of people were thinking, okay, it's kind of catching on, but there's a limit to the market for this, and people aren't going to get behind it unless it's, federally insured. Like bank accounts are. But I think that we're seeing the momentum really continue with Bitcoin. I certainly underestimated that at the beginning of the year. And from the people who are much smarter at analyzing Bitcoin than I am, from my conversations I've had with them, this could still have plenty of room to grow and go even farther from this. I've seen Bitcoin kind of becoming more established in ETFs potentially for next year. There are Bitcoin exchanges that are getting bank charters now in the western part of the United States. There's some really interesting things going on. This is not just a kids in their basement playing around with Bitcoin anymore. This is penetrating the mass market of the financial services industry. And I think that caught a lot of people up by surprise this past year.
Now, Simon, is this a prelude to you wanting to pay us in Bitcoin? I know your original offer was to pay us in Beanie Babies and Pogs, but we rejected that. Are we going to Bitcoin in 2021?
The Pogs offer is still good, Dan. You can still take me up on that one. I saw that an NFL player is now actually accepting half of his salary in Bitcoin going forward. So it's going to get interesting. I think we can probably work something out with you and I if you want to get paid in Bitcoin instead of dollars.
I do not. As always, I want to be paid in gold doubloons delivered to me by a clown on a unicycle. It's a little specific. Maxx Chatsko, we are getting silly. You are up. And then we will cut back to Manisha Samy, who has rejoined us. Maxx Chatsko, question number 4. What did you get wrong in 2020?
Well, I'm perfect, Dan. I've never been wrong, ever. No, one of the things I really like about joining 7 Investing is I now have time to think, and I get to interact with each of you guys, my lead advisors, and learn from you guys and, update my thinking and mental framework. So one thing that I've been wrong about in 2020, of the many things, is I was a little too stubborn about valuations for too long. It's a little easier, I think, in development stage drug companies where, you're like, they don't have any data or they only have phase 1 trials. Why is this worth, $5 billion? I know I just talked about the market being inefficient in pricing drug companies, but some of these I was like, man, this doesn't make sense. To me, it's not the same as like a cloud computing company where maybe it has revenue and it's growing quickly. So you can squint your eyes and tilt your head and maybe, oh yeah, I can justify this valuation in 5 years or 3 years or whatever it might be. It's a lot harder to do that in drug development. So I do think there are specific companies or maybe even little industries that are kind of trading at some ridiculous valuations. But overall, I was definitely too stubborn on specific companies or overall. So I've had to update my thinking there about some of these companies do make sense, even though they've tripled this year.
I will say quickly before we get to Manisha, I was most wrong when the pandemic began, and I went, well, things will be normal by summer, right? Like if I book trips for summer, that'll be okay. Now I'm cautiously optimistic about this spring and this coming summer. Manisha Samy, welcome back. What did you get terribly wrong in 2020?
Sure. So I will take the opposite point of view as Max. I think I've been overly optimistic about stocks. And so for me, sometimes I'm not looking at where the current market cap is. I'm thinking, oh, this is a really cool development. And I instantly want to jump into the technology and not thinking, maybe it needs to pull back or maybe things are already priced in. So I think, and this is still evolving, is maybe being a bit more risk averse.
So I'm going to throw this one. We're going to take some of your questions now. And thank you, Manisha. My apologies. I was trying to read the comments while watching you talk here. Max Lucas asks, what is a company you don't own but want to do more research on in the new year? I'm going to throw this to Simon because there's a better chance Simon will have one that we've heard of than Max or Manisha will have. Simon, your thoughts?
It's wintertime, so I'm going to stick with the theme of the frigid temperatures you're no doubt going through over there in Florida right now, Dan. I mean, what was it, 65 degrees for you this past week?
Yeah, we had a day that it was 44 during the day, which might be the coldest I've ever had. I had to put a sweatshirt on, Simon. It's terrible. I really feel like, can we dome the place? Like, what is going on? Like, yeah, I cannot imagine what it's like in Pittsburgh now. That or Cleveland, or, well, it's okay in Texas, I would guess. But yeah, it was a nightmare. But Simon, so what is it? Are you going to go with like a coat company, a company that makes hot chocolate? Like, where are we going?
Well, I feel for you, Dan. 65 degrees and actually having to put on a coat, but that's nothing compared to Maxx and Manisha having to go through the snow in the northern east. And that's my ticker. Snow is Snowflake. That's a company that I'm really interested in right now. This is kind of the foundation that's built upon other cloud computing companies. So you can do computing on Google or Amazon or Microsoft. But Snowflake makes it easy to have a data warehouse where you can actually do the analytics on all of your data. And so it's cloud native. You know, everybody's trying to move data to the cloud. They don't know how to do this. It's a kind of a difficult transition. Snowflake's making that easy. I haven't bought the shares yet because, you know, it really seems like a really expensive company, at least in terms of traditional valuation metrics. So there's some further digging that I'm going to have to do in 2021 to make sure if that valuation is justified.
Simon, totally unrelated, but there's a Simon outlet mall near me. Nothing to do with your name, of course, Simon Property Group. And they have a snow cone place, and it's like a little kiosk stand, and it's pretty good. And, you know, they sell like ice water for like $4 or $5. And about 2 doors down, they opened another snow cone place. Now, if I was the first guy, I would be really, really angry about this. I feel like this is going to be a problem in retail going forward, where we're just so desperate to fill the spots that we don't think about the overall health. And I'm being a little silly there, but it's something that's irritated me since I saw it. Because, like, you know, I get it. If you're like a Dunkin' Donuts, a Starbucks might go in next door. But, like, how much snow cone market is there even in a Southern Florida outdoor outlet mall? We're going to take one more from King Kang, and then we'll get to what we're watching, and we'll grab some more questions as we go on. King Kang asks, are there any themed areas to avoid in 2021, whether due to fundamentals or valuations? I'll field this a little bit and then throw it to Maxx and Manisha. I don't think you should ever avoid an area. There could be an area where 9 out of 10 companies are terrible. Airlines. I won't invest in airlines, but I would consider investing in Southwest because I like how they run their business. So that might be an outlier in an industry I'd otherwise throw away. Maxx, your thoughts here?
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. You know, buy individual businesses, not a theme or an industry. You know, but to get to the spirit of the question, I think there's a lot of fluff in electric vehicles. And again, I think that's like these new traders coming in, right? Look at all these companies in you know, NIO or Tesla or QuantumScape, right? The valuations are getting a little silly. So maybe think twice about, you know, when you buy in the company, it might still be a good business, but how much growth are you going to get in the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years? You know, if you buy in at the top, it might be a while before you realize any gains, if you do at all. So just be cautious and you know, conscious of that.
Manisha, I'll give you the last word on this subject here.
Sure. I agree with all of you. There are no
Boring.
but I will say, again, specific therapeutics, one thing I would not invest in are companies that only have 1 or 2 drugs in their pipeline. That's just scary. I mean, you're basically asking for failure. Because most of these drugs will probably not be commercialized. And if you just have 1 drug, and we saw it earlier, I believe this week, but there was a company that was down 70% because they had one and it did not show promise. So that's, you know, the one area that I would be avoiding.
And don't chase COVID-19 profits. We saw today in England that the AstraZeneca vaccine was approved in kind of an unconventional way that I sort of hope the Biden administration is more willing to kind of break the rules when the science says, yes, this is good. But they said they're going to charge $2.50 per dose for the vaccine. That's basically the cost of an ice cream sandwich. It is hard to make money, so don't chase that. Simon, we're going to get to what we're watching, but before we do that, today is the 30th. Tomorrow is the 31st, and it's 2020, so there might be a 32nd, but assuming there isn't, that makes 2 days from now the 1st. What happens on the 1st for 7 Investing members?
It's the new year, so we're going to be issuing our very first stock recommendations of 2021, Dan. This is going to be a very interesting batch, too, because there are companies in the list this time around for January that I had never heard of. And I've been following the equity markets for a decade now, and there were new ones to me that we've actually going to be recommending in January. We've uncovered some great companies. Again, the first of the month is where we issue our newest recommendations. We're finding our 7 top stock market opportunities every single month, and we'll be issuing the new ones on New Year's 2021.
And we highly suggest you join now. You don't want to wake up on New Year's Day, push aside the pizza box, the empties, and have to go find your credit card. You can join at 7investing.com/subscribe. I'll also suggest if you go look at our Twitter, it's very possible we've tweeted out some of our members. Each member gets a referral code. And if you join through their referral code, they get a month free. We have people who are getting like 30 months free. And that's the best part of this. We want to share. We want you to be so proud to be a member that you tell your friends and you're happy to be not just getting a free month of membership, but being, bringing someone else into the family, into the fold. Of course, we're going to do member exclusive calls next month. We do one for existing members, one for new members. We're going to release the videos of all of our picks. It took us 3 days to shoot them, but we each defended our pick and answered questions. With that, let's move to what we're watching. These are the biggest stories of the year. We, of course, appreciate you playing along. After what we're watching, we're going to get to more of your questions. Then we're going to do some predictions. Then we'll hit our finisher. Maxx Chatsko, what is the biggest story in your sector this year? Vaccines not included.
Yeah, so I cover, biotech and renewable energy. I figured vaccines are too easy, right? So I'm going with renewable energy. And I think, the biggest story here is just it's been another record year. And because it's growing and it's, every year is kind of going to be a new year, a new high, a new record, right? But for the first time in history, all renewable energy in the electricity sector, in the power sector, is going to output more energy than coal-fired power plants. And that's something that should stick around forever. That should never reverse, right? So there's some estimates that, coal had a really bad year, but maybe it'll come back in 2021. I don't think that's the case. I mean, just a little bit higher, right? It's not coming back.
The horse and buggy is back, baby.
But natural gas prices are way lower than anyone thought they'd be, even at the end of this year. And there's a record amount of supply for natural gas. So I think coal is still going to get squeezed by natural gas. So coal's not going to have a big comeback year or anything next year. So renewables are still going to be kicking butt. Now, this is the first time that any power source in American history since 1776, Dan, we have data back to 1776. Do you believe it?
I wasn't quite born yet, but yes, I do believe it.
Oh, okay. I was off by a couple of years, whatever. So this is the first time that any major power source has fallen in half, 50% in such a short period of time. Coal has done it. Congrats to coal. But anyway, renewable energy, another record year, right? So 2020, we added almost 35 gigawatts of wind and solar this year. That's an insane amount. Next year, 2021, onshore wind still going to add about 10 gigawatts is the estimate, which is a huge amount for any year. 10 gigawatts is a pretty rare thing for onshore wind. And utility scale solar is actually going to add more power capacity than it did this year. So 14 gigawatts is the estimate for utility scale solar. This stuff's just getting started. It's going to be huge. So, this is the story here.
I bought a solar battery that can charge my phone. If I leave it in the sun for 8 hours, it can charge my phone to about 3%. So we are not quite there, but it is coming along. Caleb Lyon has a comment that's along these lines. He points out that Minnesota electric vehicles charging stations are popping up everywhere. I've noticed that here in Florida too. It's largely Tesla, but the public buildings have sort of generic ones, and it's becoming more and more common. And it's something I think about a lot because, as you know, I'm in Orlando, Florida at the moment, or Davenport, Florida, near Orlando. I live in West Palm Beach. It's about a 2.5 hour ride. I can't go electric because there's no easy way to charge in between those two things. Going forward, if that becomes a common thing at all rest stops, then I might consider an electric vehicle. Simon, what is your what we're watching topic?
Well, first of all, Dan, I think that based on what Max said, you need to get a little windmill to start charging up your phone. Maybe that's even more efficient than the solar panel that you've got. Long wind and short coal, got it. But I think that my big prediction, what I'm most excited about is going to be kind of the shift from traditional to consumer-facing healthcare. And this is something, when we've talked about hospitals, we kind of talk about like slow innovation, right? They've got the paper files behind you, where that have your manila folder of your record. And then they kind of move to these proprietary electronic healthcare records. And then you've got now all of a sudden Google has got its Project Nightingale that's going out, and it's got 50 million patient records that's moving to the cloud. And when Google does something, it's not going to be sitting around. It's going to be taking a lot of action on that. And on top of that, we saw Teladoc make an acquisition of Livongo. It's trying to get closer to patients through medical devices that they're actually putting on themselves and keeping in touch with doctors through telehealth appointments on the internet rather than going to the hospital. We saw GoodRx IPO earlier this year. It was at let me get my numbers correct. It went public at a $12.6 billion valuation, raised $1.2 billion. This is a platform that's helping consumers find lower prices for pharmacy drugs. These things like this, this is disrupting healthcare. This is unbundling the hospital. And you've got big tech companies, and Apple too, and a lot of other big tech companies too, have been talking about healthcare in conference calls for years. But it's been a slow progression. And I think that we're really starting to see that accelerate right now. This is something that's good for America, who's spending $3.6 trillion a year on healthcare, but it's also good for patients too, because we want to be more involved in our own health and lead healthier lives. So it's something that's a win-win in my opinion. It's really kind of encouraging and refreshing to see companies take the lead on this one.
I literally use my watch to track my health, and I'm eager for the day when my watch can do enough that the doctor downloads it before an appointment, and he's like, "Oh, Dan, you need to walk a little more. I don't know why your resting heart rate is so high at 10 o'clock every night." It's like, well, I'm watching the Celtics play. Like being able to figure all that stuff out. I know my watch dictates my day. I've taken walks late at night because I haven't closed my rings. I can take an ECG to see if my heart rhythm is right. I haven't done that because it's a little scary. But that said, Manisha, what you're watching, the biggest story of the year? It's one we've talked about a few times here.
Sure. So for me, it has to be the results that we've been getting from CRISPR-based therapeutics. We saw a lot of progress in sickle cell disease. This was the first kind of long-term data with patients with sickle cell disease and beta thalassemia. So of the 10 patient update we got, patients with sickle cell disease, and basically after a single CRISPR-based therapy, basically these patients, the longest one out was about just over a year. They remained transfusion-free, and they didn't have something called VOC, so vaso-occlusive crises. So they didn't have extreme pain, and they didn't have to go into the hospital. So a lot of times, on average, these patients would be in the hospital 6-7 times, and after a single dose, they haven't been to the hospital once. So I think we're really onto something here, and seeing actual human results and not preclinical data or non-human primate data, that's very exciting, and that's the area that I'm looking at right now.
I think it's important to say, Simon, that I have learned more about the future of medicine in the past, few months than in the entire, 46 and a half years previously. And I feel really good about it. I actually feel like science is trying to get ahead of whatever might go wrong with me, in a few years. I feel like, perhaps there's going to be new organs. Maybe there's going to be a way to eventually fix my troublesome knees without knee replacements. There is a lot of stuff I am very excited about. Now, if they could come up with a light that plugs into my computer that doesn't blink off every 45 seconds. I'd also like to see science work on that. But guys, we're going to move into what we're watching in a few minutes, but I want to take a few more comments from the audience. This is an interactive show, and we really appreciate how big a part all of you have been with 7 Investing now. Hard to believe we've only been doing this for a few months. ZL says, how do you determine the amount of cash to keep in your portfolio? I know that for me, I don't keep any cash in my portfolio. I have an automatic transfer twice a month, and I generally spend that money pretty quickly after the transfer. And if I'm letting it sit, it's only because there's maybe a technical reason I'm not buying something. Maybe it's the timing of our picks or whatnot. And in general, I'll move extra money if I want to buy something because I see an opportunity, and I have to decide whether I'm loaning it to myself in that I'll stop my regular contributions, or that I'm just putting some added money in. Max, your thoughts here?
Yeah, I'm kind of like you, Dan. I have transfers go in and I kind of know what I'm going to buy ahead of time. But, I'm younger and earlier in my investing journey. So that might fit maybe some of the subscribers out there, people watching the show. So that's okay. I mean, everyone's, on their own path. But yeah, so I would like to have more cash in my portfolio to take advantage of some opportunities as they rise, but I'm just not there yet.
I, of course, am 103 years old, by which I look fabulous. Now, I'm the oldest member of the team, and I will say I came to investing probably the latest in life of all of us. I mean, I'm 47. I didn't really become an investor until 6 years ago. And along with all of you, I am learning so much. Manisha, anything you want to say? How much cash, how much Bitcoin do you keep in your portfolio? No, that's a joke on the Bitcoin.
I actually do have Bitcoin, but not that's on Coinbase. But I'm just like you guys. I am fully invested. If oftentimes, similar to yourself, Dan, I take out extra cash from my bank account to invest because I do think about what I want to buy ahead of time. But otherwise, fully invested.
The other thing that's important to think about is where you're invested in a 401k or in other sort of retirement venues. People have asked me a lot why I don't own shares of Amazon directly. And it's because some of the funds I own through my 401k, which is self-directed, they own interest in Amazon. And I actually have a pretty considerable position, but I don't own it directly. So it is important to sort of get a sense of what you own. I don't sit on a lot of cash. Some people do. And if you're the type of person who looks for opportunities, it's not a bad idea to have some cash ready, especially if you're not in the fortunate position, some of us are, where we have cash available, where we can loan ourselves the money or move some extra money in. I'm going to take one more comment, and I'm going to throw it to Simon. It's from Sandeep David. I'm sorry. That's just a comment I'm going to throw out. Sandeep says, we are now seeing SPACs being named after Netflix series. Is this the top? Simon, I'll let you comment on that quickly. That's not actually the one I wanted you to answer, but go ahead and take a comment there.
Dan, we asked Steve, are there going to be more SPACs or fewer SPACs 3 years from this year? Is 2023 going to have more SPACs or less? And Steve says there's going to be more. So I got to stick with Steve. This is not the top, Sandeep. We're going to keep going 3 years from now. Take the over.
For Halloween, Max is going as the finance vampire Count Spacula. So it is all coming. Yushupa Toure says, there are so many good companies that you recommend. Thank you. How does one decide which one to buy? Or do you have to buy every single one? You do not have to buy every single one. Simon, you created the company. How does this work?
Yeah, I love this question. Thank you for asking, Yushupa. And Dan, you alluded to it earlier when you were talking about Maxx and Manisha really opening your eyes to biotechnology companies and genomics companies, something you didn't know anything about before. You said that, the previous 46 years, you weren't really investing in that space. And then you see the research that Maxx and Manisha have done so well. And now you're actually investing in their picks every month. Which is exactly what we've seen from several of our subscribers saying the exact same thing, that this is an eye-opener. We are doing our homework. We are finding the innovative companies. We're digging in annual reports and market updates and everything else out there and finding our best ideas. And even if that's not your direct circle of competence of what you traditionally have been investing in, that's kind of why we started Seven Investing, was to have a diversity of different viewpoints. And our podcast that we're going to publish tomorrow is going to be about our 7 investing principles that kind of ties all of these different diversity of markets that we cover and diversity of companies that we cover. What are the principles that guide us in the companies that we pick? And so how do you decide which one to buy? That's a totally personal decision. We're just providing our very best ideas across the entire market. We categorize them based on the size of the company and the risk level and the industry that it's in, and the kind of how well do you want to sleep at night kind of factors for this. But from there, it's kind of what kind of company are you looking for? Are you looking for a lower risk dividend paying retail company? Are you looking for a very high risk biotechnology company? We hand the torch to you to make those decisions, and we kind of run the gamut across the full buffet of options every month. And really, we're going to be doing that again in January too. So I'm really excited about our next group of picks.
Yeah, and it's one of those situations where we might validate what you were thinking about anyway. So you might be following along with certain companies, and I come out and write a recommendation. You go, okay, like that's independent validation of what I was thinking. Now, when I buy a Maxx stock or a Manisha stock, I am going, okay, they're smarter than me in this space. I trust them. I'm going to go with it. And one of the questions Roman Michael asked, I'm curious, how many stocks do each of you own? I own close to 20 now, when it was way less than that. because I am much more likely to sit through one of our picks and go, oh, wow, that's a stock I'd never heard of. Hey, maybe Matt Cochran made a really compelling argument about this. I'm going to buy a little. And I'm not making major bets. I'm not buying, $10,000 a pop of these stocks. I'm probably buying $100 or $200. But I find it really enjoyable because most of the stocks I pick are not going to go, from $20 to $60 in a month. Most of them are going to be very slow elephant up a hill climbs. And some of these stocks that I bought from Max or Manisha, it's like, oh, it's up 60% today. It's down 40% tomorrow. It changed its name. Like, there's a lot more excitement going on. But we are in the home stretch. This is our last show of the year, and we're making it a long one. You are getting your don't pay us any money worth for this show. And we appreciate all of you watching. We appreciate all the support, all the comments. We'll get to a few more before we hit our finisher. But for the home stretch, I want you guys to make predictions. What do you think is going to happen in 2021? We will start with Manisha on this one.
Sure. So I've been looking at the DNA sequencing space quite a bit. And I think the cost of long read sequencing, so there's short reads and long reads, I think the cost of long reads will continue to fall and become even more competitive with the giant Illumina. But also, I also predict that we'll have a bunch of other startups based on sequencing technologies. I know Max is a proponent of nanopore sequencing. I generally just like long read sequencing. And I think along the same vein, it's also important to figure out how the protein structure is going to be. And we saw a significant development with AlphaGo and in terms of predicting protein structure, but seeing more of that develop in terms of here's a sequence, how do proteins fold? I think that's going to be a huge part of it as well. And I think it ties directly into sequencing and diagnostics. I think that's going to be a huge area next year.
Thank you, Manisha. Simon Erickson, your bold prediction for 2021.
Dan, this is funny because we didn't know each other's predictions before the show, but I'm so glad that Manisha gave me the set for the spike on this one too. My prediction is that Oxford Nanopore goes public in 2021. She was just talking about long read sequencing. We're seeing a lot of attention on Illumina. We're seeing a lot of attention on PacBio. I think it's time for Oxford to actually join the public markets. People thought they were going to do it this year. They raised $150 million in January. A lot of people thought that was going to be their IPO. We're seeing the adoption of genomic sequencing across healthcare. I think it's time for Oxford to join the party. I think they IPO next year. And Max, I know that you and I have a bet related to Illumina that would take place by 2028. This is actually favorable for you if this happens on that bet that we have.
Yeah, the people of the UK need a win. They had Brexit, they have the pandemic. I think, they need Oxford Nanopore to go public. That would be something to cheer for.
Before we get to Max's prediction, I'm going to point out I have one final ridiculous 2020 problem. I don't know if you can see this, but my ice cube is so large, it won't sink down to where my coffee is. So I am now drinking warm iced coffee. Who decided an ice cube needed to be this big? These are the types of problems we hope to leave behind us in 2021. Maxx Chatsko, your prediction. I think it involves an even better chicken sandwich. No, your predictions this year or for 2021.
We just can't keep you happy, Dan. There's icebergs melting and they're too small. Now your ice cubes are too big. Pick one, okay?
Hey, I'll bring this to the polar ice caps if someone wants to give me a ride.
Throw it in the ocean, like our trash. All right, so my prediction for 2021, I think that a super major, so it's a major oil and gas producer. There's only like 5 or 6 in the world, depending on how you count them. A super major is going to acquire a top 20 U.S. electric utility in 2021. We've seen a couple of these big companies, the Shells, the Totals, the Exxon Mobils, start to get into utilities. They're buying, natural gas utilities in Europe. Some of them have started to nip around the edges of electric utilities, but they're going to need to start to make moves away from liquid fuels, which is how we power transportation today, and to electric fuels, which is how we're going to start powering how we're going to start powering transportation this decade. And I think it's going to happen very rapidly. So these companies have a lot of cash flow. They're huge, but they're going to have to pivot. And I think they're going to do that by getting more into electric power production and distribution.
we're getting close to the end of this edition of 7 Investing Now, but I wanted to throw out a few more of your comments. John Hinn says, "Dan, that makes me feel better." He's talking about how it's kind of never too late to start investing. "I didn't start till I was 37 last year, and I felt like it was way too late." It's never too late. Look, do I wish we all started at 16? Yeah, my brother created an investing account for my son, an Acorns account, so not an individual stocks, where he's going to put money in every month, and when my son is 21, he takes control of that account, and that will give him a nice little nest egg, which he could use maybe to get a first place to live. Who knows what you need? Maybe a space car at that point, where that's 4 years in the future. So who knows what that's going to look like. I wish more people. I know. I'm going to guess, Simon, you have an investing account for your child.
Yes, we do. Mm-hmm. That's right.
Yeah, and it's something that I talk with my son a lot about. What my picks are, why they are, and Simon, he's not a subscriber, so I'm technically breaking the rules there, but sort of the logic of why I'm picking things, why I invest in certain companies, how it works, and it's really important for those discussions to happen, because the sooner you start, the easier it is, but there's no reason to not start if you haven't. Going to share one more comment from Pated Hav says, "It's amazing to be a subscriber of 7 Investing. I've been there since April, May. Really appreciate the detailed analysis, which includes the bull and the bear thesis." Yeah, that's the cool part of this. When we do our call, so I might present my company, and let's say it's company X. They make a new kind of butter that's good for you, and I'm really bullish on it. And Max comes out and he says, people really like regular butter, and he pushes back. I have to answer those questions, and you get to see that process play out across all the picks. So it sort of gives you not just the idea that, hey, we had a thought, but we were able to defend that thought. And it's theoretically possible that we might go through that meeting and change our mind. And I know I've changed my mind early in the process before those meetings because of discussions we've had. So it's amazing that you all, the 7 Investing Nation here, get to see so much of how we do it, sort of how the bread is baked, so to say. With that said, we have gone long here. We're going to hit our finisher. Sam Bailey, if you could bring it up. We did briefly debate just replacing all of our video with Sam's absolutely adorable son for most of the show, but we decided not to do that. We'll pull that one out later in the year. Which of these companies will have the best 2021? That's by percentage of market cap increase. About a quarter of you said Fastly. 14.8% said Mercado Libre. 47.8% said C Limited. 11.5% said Tesla. Simon, I don't even know how to answer this one. I wrote the question. I have no idea what I would pick. Your thoughts here?
I'm going with the minority on this one, Dan. My vote is for Mercado Libre. Choice B, which was over 15%, something like that. Just getting started. E-commerce in Latin America is booming. They've got the payments and the logistics figured out too. That's the one that I'm voting for.
I actually think that's the safest play. C Limited, it absolutely could happen, but there's some downside risk there of a lot of their revenue being dependent on a game, and games tend to be fickle. I know they're diversifying. That's what they're using the money for. Max, Manisha, anything I know this isn't exactly your area. Any thoughts here, or feel free to just say Happy New Year.
I've never heard of some of these companies, so Happy New Year.
What is that?
I don't know.
Manisha, jump in.
I'm seconding that. I don't know enough about any of these companies to have an opinion. So, but I do like voting for the underdog, so that's my vote.
I hardly could say Tesla is an underdog, but with that being said, that's it. We're done. That's the final episode of 7 Investing Now for 2020. And I'll say 2020, good riddance. But the best thing about this year was that we met so many of you. This wasn't a company when this year started, and now we are a part of so many lives. It means so much. I know we always talk at the end of the show about how you can get in touch with us, and of course, at 7 Investing on Twitter, we all interact with that. info@7investing.com if you have a more formal question, and usually it's Steve Symington. He'll hand those out to us. We'll answer them. It's amazing how quickly you get an answer. Maybe not for the next few days while we're still in the holiday period, but in general. But what's great about this is we didn't just build a company. We're building a family, a group of people that are talking about investing, that are learning together, that can ask us questions, can interact, and eventually, Simon and I had a long conversation about this yesterday. Eventually, can socialize. You might see us me say, hey, I'm going to be in Vegas, these dates. If anybody wants to grab a drink, I'll be at this bar. We're so excited to be able to do that and to grow this as the year goes on. And Simon, you created this. I will give you the last word and let you say goodbye to 2020.
Thank you very much, Dan. Thank you, everyone, for supporting us in the 7 Investing journey. Thank you to Maxx, Dan, and Manisha for joining the 7 Investing team in 2020. We've got a real exciting year planned for 2021. We already have some new surprises that we're going to announce here in January. So we're really stoked about what the next year is going to bring. We're looking forward to finding even more innovative stock ideas. And thanks so far for your support and looking forward to the next year.
Happy New Year, everybody.